Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I hope
Happy
everyone had a
Chiefs.
great evening.
Yeah, happy Chiefs Monday.
I'm wearing my red.
I wore red all last week.
I'm sure that's what caught them to win.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that I'm sure that helped a lot.
I think it did.
So they went into overtime and pulled it out. Yay.
Boy, I tell you that touchdown was like they put it together.
They do. It's like Patrick always says, why do you doubt the Chiefs? Well, you scare us a lot. Is why.
Well, and I think that's what made for an excellent game because if it
Yeah.
had been a shutout, it would have been boring. And either way, and it's like there was like I counted the cars in my neighborhood that gathered across the street at this house across the street from me. There were 15 cars. And the house isn't very big. And I think to myself, how do they all get in there? But it's like a ritual. They come every time there's a Chiefs game on TV and
Like the 15,000 people that were down at Power and Light.
oh my gosh,
Oh, yeah. And it cost $40 to get in. And um,
to stand.
I can't imagine, yeah, to stand. I can't imagine. And then when everybody was jumping around at the end, oh my goodness, so much excitement. So,
And you were and I mean, and you were having to hold your drinks and pay for them and all this other stuff, and you're not even there, but I guess the big screen is quite the thing.
yeah. Quite the thing. So yeah, big celebration for Kansas City, and there's so much going on this week. Oh my goodness! So that February the 14th is a huge day for everybody. The Chiefs parade. It's Ash Wednesday. Um, we are registering voters and re-registering voters and doing a little voter education out at Eastland Court on Wednesday. So lots of stuff. And we have Ash Wednesday service at church at 7 p.m. So anybody that is watching, you are invited to join us.
And then on Thursday,
And then
there's a
on
Lenten Bible study.
Tuesday,
So make sure you mark that on your calendars as we start our journey together, learning more about our faith and about Lent and why we honor it and revere it.
and that study is Walk Toward Glory. I'm really looking forward to this. We will be on Zoom at 7 o'clock. So please, if you do not have the link, you can call church. You can check the Wednesday connection. It's in there, it's on the church website. But because you don't have the link, don't let that be a reason for you not to join us. We can have 100 people in this Zoom learning setting. So we're really looking forward to this. We haven't done this for a while, so it's going to be fantastic.
Well, and just think, it's kind of like being at the Chiefs game, only you're in your house. So you're going to be at the Lenten Bible study in your favorite recliner and with a cup of tea or a cup of whatever and be able to explore with us, to journey with us.
And this is the opportunity, since this is just a regular Zoom call, this is the opportunity for interaction and sharing as we
That's
go through, asking questions.
that's the benefit of Zoom. You can either text a question or you can ask it, and there's some interaction, which is really, I think, important to thoughtful learning because sometimes my perspectives, I don't get the right perspective, and the next guy has a better idea of how to put it. And I learned so much from other people that I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, that sharing time or discovery time, let's put it that way, that discovery time um, when we share and learn from each other is so important. That's, we keep saying we just need to listen. We just need to listen. And listening to what other people have to say, it gives a totally different perspective. Sometimes I ignore it. Sometimes I take parts of it. Sometimes I do with that as it fits into my way of thinking and doing things. But
Because
we're all walking toward the glory.
we're walking to the glory, but we're all doing it in our own unique ways.
Yeah.
God calls each of us. He knows us by name. It doesn't matter how many different ways we have of walking forward. He's there with us. That's what that's sometimes hard as a believer um, to have to understand the magnificent or the bigness of God. And
And his
so, that he can do that he knows every one of us by name, that he can do all the things with each of us in our own unique way and relate to us and meet us where we are, even though we're all so different.
his plan is different for each one of us.
Yeah, and I can't imagine wrapping my mind around that. I mean, I think that's where we all get hung up a little bit. We just can't imagine that he knows me,
And me.
Yeah,
And everybody out there in listening land or viewing land.
well, that's just it. I mean, there's so much diversity, and it was like church yesterday, listening to Ayub. It was wonderful, and then having a chance to share with he and his wife afterwards at lunch. Uh, to hear what they have to say, to see how they experience it and how they phrase it. It's like listening to Pastor Lydia. There's a difference in the way they phrase it to where it gives English a depth that we regular English speakers sometimes can't see past, because we're listening so hard to make sure we catch every word they say that we really are listening. So a person who speaks to us not in English as a second language, I pay way more attention to that, I have to admit, than if it's just a regular English speaker speaking, because I have to really pay attention and try to understand what they're telling me. And I think that's what we miss sometimes when we don't try really hard to listen to someone that is different.
And the listening, I was thinking sometimes my mind, I'm listening really intently, but my mind is trying to process how this fits with what I'm thinking, with my way of doing things already, or new traditions. I love learning about traditions.
Well, and when you read the sermon title, you think, oh, I bet you that she's going to talk about blah, blah, blah. And it turns out it's something totally different. And you get a whole nother twist on that particular lesson. And so I think that a lot of us walk away with something we weren't expecting. And I think that's why it's important to listen. God reaches us in so many different ways. And sometimes he surprises us if we but listen to catch it.
He does surprise us, yes. Very. Most of them are very pleasant surprises. Some of those are, Sue, what is it you are doing, or what is it you're trying to accomplish? Stop
Debbie,
and listen.
Debbie, that was not it.
Maybe that was not right. That was
You
not
got
right.
that one wrong again.
Which is important for us to know that that just because you're Christian doesn't mean that you get it right all the time. Definitely not. We get it right a lot of the time, but definitely not all of the time. So this past week, in one of my, you all know I love Facebook posts, the educational ones, and so there was one on Shrove Tuesday, which is tomorrow, by the way. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
And good morning, Carrie. I know you're out there watching us too. So Shrove Tuesday.
And there's Ross.
And there's Ross. Good morning. Shrove Tuesday is the same as Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday or Pancake Tuesday. I don't know how many of you know about this. I'm going to share a little tidbit with you because, you know, I'm from Kansas, and there's a pancake tradition that takes place in Liberal, Kansas, down in the southwest corner of the state. But so Shrove Tuesday is the final day before Lent season starts, which that is Wednesday. So I'm going to give you a little history of this. Shrove Tuesday is observed by many Christians, including Anglicans, Lutherans, Methodists, and Roman Catholics, who make a special point of self-examination, considering what wrongs we might have done, and repent. What amendments, what changes do we need to make in certain areas of our life and our spiritual growth? We especially need to ask God's help in dealing with all of this. It's like a simple, God, help me on this path. Help me on this walk toward glory so that I understand. Shrove is an English word that means absolution or formal release of guilt for sins by confession and doing penance, or feeling sorry for what we have done and trying to do better. It dates back to the 16th century, and it also involves the ritual of burning the fronds, the palm fronds from the previous Palm Sunday. And that's what is used to put the cross on our foreheads on Ash Wednesday service. Another popular tradition of Shrove Tuesday is the ringing of church bells to call the faithful to come and confess before the solemn season of Lent begins, and for people to begin frying their pancakes. I thought that was hysterical when I read that part. So Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras, and an interesting tradition there. I was very fortunate to be in New Orleans for Mardi Gras a couple of times. And I don't know if you all have heard of the king cake and what that's all. Oh my goodness, they are delicious. They're kind of like a Swedish bread that is a woven kind of wreath. And there's a little tiny, like a 1-inch plastic baby that is buried somewhere in that cake or under it as a possibility. And whoever gets that slice says that they will have prosperity for the year and that they will be king or queen of the Mardi Gras party, the Mardi Gras celebration. It's decorated. The first one I ever saw, I thought, oh, I don't know that I can eat green and purple frosting, but it's frosted like the jewels in the crowns of the three magi that went to see the baby Jesus and take their gifts on Epiphany, like we talked about earlier. It's a tradition. Fat Tuesday. This was interesting to me. I never knew why we called this Fat Tuesday, but it's a tradition in many societies to eat pancakes and other foods made with butter, eggs, fat, or lard that would need to be used up before the beginning of Lent, because those were things that they did not eat during that 40 days of fasting. So Fat Tuesday, that's really what it means, that they eat in excess. So, did you know all that stuff, Debbie?
I had read about some of it, but the pancake thing, we did that a couple of years at my other church. Only took it up a notch and made them waffles. So several
Oh,
people in the church had brought their waffle makers, and we'd stand up there and make individual waffles for the people would come up, and then we'd have like a fruit bar and a chocolate syrup bar and all the goodies that go
mm.
on top of it. So, we definitely got into the let's eat until we die type mentality. But we also talked about what it meant. But we did break our waffles together. It was a lot of fun.
So the pancake race, I don't know how the connection was ever made, but the tradition originated in 1445 with a housewife from Olney, Buckinghamshire, in England. She was so busy making pancakes before the start of Lent that she forgot about the time until she heard the church bells ringing. And then she was in such a hurry to get out the door. This is a story. She raced out of the house to go to church, still carrying her frying pan and a pancake in it. Okay. And then she tossed it to toss the pancake to prevent it from burning. So the pancake race still is very relevant. There's a contest between the people of Liberal, Kansas since 1950. And they make sure that the race course is the same length, the same amount of time, everything. So since 1950, the competition, it says, Liberal Kansas has won 38 of those races, and Oldie, Buckinghamshire, has 31 wins of that race. So I guess I should have thought about figuring that out way before now. Why did we do this pancake race? This is kind of strange. But
Well,
the women do. They run down the street with their frying pan, and they have to, or men and women, and they have to flip the pancake so many times.
I
So,
wonder how fast you can say that place in England and how many times. That's how much I was listening to you go, boy, she got that all out in one word and in one breath. But that's quite a place to have that kind of a big name.
yeah. So that kind of brings us back to why do we celebrate all of this, and why do we celebrate the birth of Jesus? Why do we celebrate the death? How do we tie this all together? And it's God's great love for us, that keeps us coming back. There was one Bible verse from Romans 13:8. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. And there was a story about a young lady that I want to share real quick, and then I'm going to be quiet for a minute and let Deborah share. I read this devotional about a young new believer. She had lots of questions after she committed her life to Jesus. And then she started reading the Bible, and she had even more questions. And I'm sure, that's kind of the way it is with us. Once we start reading, it's like, okay, well, now I need to talk to somebody. I need more information. She reached out to her friend and said, how can I possibly obey all of God's commands? I just snapped at my husband this morning. How can I do this? And her friend said, just keep reading the Bible and ask the Holy Spirit to help you love others as Jesus loves you. So then when she shared this devotion, which was 20 years later, she said, living as a child of God for 20 years, that simple but very profound truth still helps her today to remember how much God loves us. There was three cycles that she shared in this great love cycle. It was that Paul affirmed that love is central to the life of a believer. And by continuing to pay the debt to love one another, followers of Christ will walk in obedience. Not 100%, because we're human. We can't do that. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. And then from Romans 13:10, we fulfill the law because God does no harm, because love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And that means he wants us to be obedient. And sometimes that's really hard. And that's one reason why our corporate worship or gathering together on Sunday morning or Wednesday night for Ash Wednesday service is so important for each of us. It helps to fill us with God's love. He wants to talk about our obligation. Paul wants to talk to us about our obligation as Jesus's followers to love all people, including those neighbors who don't look like us. And sometimes that's hard. But we need to take a step back and how can we love them? What can we do to show our love? And Pastor Lydia mentioned yesterday that random act of kindness. It doesn't cost anything to love people. Oh, you might make a pot of soup, or you might share cookies, but it doesn't cost. And there's so many ways that we can show random acts of kindness. A simple smile or a hello.
Well, I have to say that I agree with that 100% because yesterday at our potluck, my friend and I, Joanne, we sat down with Marva and her husband, and such a blessing they both were. To have conversation. I found out that she is a family practice doctor. And she has been in the US for 6 years. She hasn't been here all that long. And she was in one place and then she moved to another place. Her parents are in Chicago. And we talked about her having, there was just so much information. I asked her about in Turkey, what is cultural and what is faith driven? And is it interwoven together to where it's indistinguishable? Is it something that to be Turkish or to be Muslim, is it the same thing? Like in Israel, Jews, there's Jewish people and the culture of the Jewish people, and then there's Judaism, the faith of the Jewish people. How are those connected, and are they indistinguishable or interwoven to such a point that it's part of their knowledge, part of their way of living? Has it become a way of life rather than just a faith because of who they are and how they live? Um, I've always found that question to be pretty fascinating. And she smiled and nodded, and she said pretty much the same. And she said she talked about Ramadan. And she said that in Turkey, Ramadan has 3 extra days. But everywhere else, when she came here and she met up with other ethnic Muslims, other ethnicities, they didn't do that. So that was a different thing for her. And that's kind of how she explained it. And I thought to myself, that really is a cultural thing. It's how we interpret it. Here in America, we have many cultures and we have so many faith traditions. Even among Christians, the different denominations are so they're often quite distinct from one another. They have a core similarity, but how we interpret that, how we live that out, is based on who we affiliate with and how we identify ourselves. And that's why I think it's so important to take note of other cultures and and respect other faith traditions, even within our own faith and within our own denomination. It's so important to recognize the commonalities and how we are similar and how we are strong together versus petty and separate in small ways, things that really aren't important. I
There,
don't know.
there, there are so many more ways that we are alike than ways we are different. And in our religion, it seems it would be interesting to me to have a side by side chart of those ways we're similar and the ways that we are different. But the central core is God, and we need to keep our eye on walking towards the glory.
And it's sometimes hard with all the distractions, and then people pointing out, well, that person's different. They wear a headscarf, or that person's different. They wear an Amish cap, or that person is different because they wear dresses and they don't believe in women wearing pants. I mean, how many different ways do we make it difficult
A
for
lot.
ourselves to find the commonalities rather than, oh, look, they're different. So we have to be worried about that. And, or that person, mentioned she was worried, a couple of times where she wondered if that person was a terrorist. And I wasn't quite sure in what context she was putting that. I just thought to myself, how many times have I thought that?
Mm-hmm.
And being ignorant or uneducated, I got on a plane once to go to Germany because my daughter was having one of my grandbabies. And so I was going to go there for the birth, and I had never been out of the country except to Mexico, very briefly. And Mexico feels like California to some degree, so it didn't feel all that different. And but I got on the big wide body 747 type jet to go across the Atlantic. And as I watch people board, there is a Sikh family that gets on the plane. And a chill went through me because of my prejudice,
Mm-hmm.
because of the turban, because of the way they dressed, because of how they were very careful to be all together. And he was like a shepherd of his family, making sure that they were all safe and secure in the family unit. I felt anxiety because of what I had been taught by the news on TV and by all those things that we hear that cause us to have a prejudice or to be worried about that person rather than look at that person with love and say, oh, I wish I could know that person. On that same flight, I sat next to a person from like Kazakhstan. I forget, with one of those stands. Anyway, she didn't speak hardly any English, but she had been in the United States visiting her family in South Carolina, and she was on the plane, and we sat next to each other, and it was fun because we had a chance to talk together. Even though she spoke little to no English and I speak nothing of what she speaks, it was like with hand gestures, and she knew a couple of words and I figured out a couple of words. We managed to have quite the conversation for about 2 hours. But you have to have the time sitting in one place, avidly listening extra hard because you want to understand what that person is talking about. And I asked her the question. I said, "Are you excited to go home, or do you want to stay here?" Being an American, we think everybody wants to stay here. And she says,
Right.
and she said no, she was looking forward to going home and being with her family and stuff. But she had told me stories of how in her town they only had enough electricity to have electricity during the day, and at night they turned everything off. So
Wow.
because they didn't have enough. And I thought to myself, in a land of plenty, why can't I find plenty of love for everyone? When this person, she sat down, she trusted me, we talked together. It was wonderful sharing, but I had to listen very hard to what she was saying so I could understand. I wanted so badly to understand what she was saying that I don't know. I hope I didn't read anything into her words, but it was such a wonderful trip that, between the worry about the Sikh family and then the sitting next to someone who spoke little to no English and having a conversation. Sometimes I think we speak
What
English and we don't even understand each other.
we don't. We don't. And what a blessing it is to be able to share with people of a different culture, of a different background, whether you grew up in a small town or whether you grew up in the city. We have different learning background. We have different ways of doing things. So, Debbie, we're going to have to cut this off.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It flew by this morning.
It did, and we're not done.
Well, there's always next week, and we hope to see you all back here next week.
We do, and please join us for Ash Wednesday service at 7 p.m. at First United Methodist Church.
And for the Lenten Bible study on Thursday.
Yes, that starts the next week, but yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.